My name is Lily, a 27-year-old nurse, and my world changed when I met Mark, a charming patient with a broken leg at the hospital where I worked. After a few months of dating, he surprised me with a proposal, and I was elated. However, meeting his family, especially his mother, Margaret, was a day I dreaded, and for good reason. We arrived at Mark's family home on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The house was large and imposing, a stark contrast to my modest upbringing. I clung to Mark's arm, seeking some comfort as we rang the doorbell. Margaret opened the door, her expression neutral. "You must be Lily. Come in," she said, leading us into a lavishly decorated living room. The air was stiff with formality. As we sat down, Margaret began her interrogation. "So, Lily, Mark tells us you're a nurse. That's a noble profession. And your parents, what do they do?" I cleared my throat, feeling her piercing gaze on me. "My mother works as a saleswoman in a department store. She's been doing it for years." "And your father?" Margaret pressed on, her tone suggesting she was digging for something more. I felt my cheeks warm up with embarrassment. I never knew my father. My mom raised me by herself." Margaret's eyes widened, and her lips pursed in disapproval. "You mean you're a child of a single mother? No father figure? How peculiar. And no telling what kind of man your father was. Could have been a criminal, or mentally unstable." I sat there, stunned, feeling a rush of emotions: embarrassment, anger, hurt. Mark, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up, his voice tinged with anger. "Mom, that's enough. Lily's family background doesn't matter. I love her." But Margaret continued, undeterred. "Mark, you must think about the implications. A girl from such a background. It's not suitable." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like a bad dream. I wanted to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come out. Mark stood up, his face red with anger. "Mom, I can't believe you're saying this. Lily is the woman I love, and I won't stand for you talking about her like that." Margaret shrugged, her expression cold. "I'm just stating the obvious, Mark. It's for your own good." The rest of the visit passed in awkward silence. We left soon after, but Margaret's words echoed in my head. The ride home was quiet. Mark kept apologizing, but the damage was done. The aftermath of meeting Margaret left me uneasy, but I tried to shake it off as Mark and I started planning our wedding. Eager to mend bridges, I decided to personally send out invitations to Mark's relatives, including Margaret, hoping for a fresh start. One evening, as I was finalizing the guest list, Mark sat beside me, looking over the names. "Do you think my mom will come, after everything?" he asked, a hint of concern in his voice. "I hope so. Maybe this will help smooth things over," I said, trying to stay optimistic. A few days after mailing the invitations, I received an unexpected call from Mark's grandmother. Her voice was hesitant, laced with regret. "Lily, dear, I'm afraid I have some bad news," she began. "What is it?" I asked, a sense of dread building up. "It's about the wedding. None of us are coming. I'm so sorry, but Margaret called everyone. She said some awful things about you, spreading rumors, and then begged us not to attend," she confessed. I was stunned. "But why would she do that?" I asked, feeling a mix of anger and disappointment. "She's convinced you're not right for Mark and is doing everything to stop the wedding," the grandmother explained. Mark overheard and took the phone. "Grandma, is this true? Did Mom really say all that? Yes, Mark. I'm so sorry. We all are, she replied sadly. After hanging up, Mark was seething with anger. I can't believe she'd go this far. This is unacceptable. I felt a wave of humiliation and sadness. She's trying to ruin our wedding, Mark. What do we do? Mark took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. We'll still have our wedding, Lily. Just us and a couple of friends as witnesses. We don't need anyone who doesn't support us. I nodded, appreciating his support but still feeling the sting of rejection. Okay, let's do that. A small, intimate wedding. We proceeded with our plans, but the joy of preparing for our big day was overshadowed by Margaret's actions. Despite the setback, we were determined to celebrate our love, even if it meant having a wedding without Mark's family. Our modest wedding, though not what we initially planned, was beautiful in its own right. However, the real challenge came during a family dinner hosted by Margaret a few weeks later. I had hoped that, over time, she would come to accept me, but that night proved otherwise. As we sat around the dinner table, surrounded by Mark's relatives, the atmosphere was tense. Margaret, as if on cue, began her subtle jabs. So, Lily, I heard your wedding was quite the small affair. Budget constraints, I presume? She asked, her voice dripping with condescendence. I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment. We wanted something intimate and personal, I replied, trying to keep my composure. Margaret smirked, or perhaps it's because you couldn't afford anything grand. It must be tough on a nurse's salary. Mark, sitting beside me, clenched his fists under the table. Mom, that's enough. We're happy with how our wedding went. But Margaret was relentless. I just find it amusing, dear. Marrying into our family and yet unable to host a proper celebration. It says a lot about your background. The room fell silent, everyone avoiding eye contact. I felt isolated and humiliated, the weight of her words crushing me. Mark stood up, his voice raised in anger. Mom, stop it. You're being incredibly rude and disrespectful to my wife. Margaret shrugged, feigning innocence. I'm just stating the obvious, Mark. It's clear she married you for financial stability. I felt a lump in my throat, fighting back tears. Mark took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. That's it, we're leaving, Mark announced, his voice steady but filled with disappointment. We got up, and as we walked to the door, I turned to Margaret. I may not come from wealth, Margaret, but I have something money can't buy, integrity and love. Something you clearly lack. The drive home was quiet, the air filled with unspoken words. Mark kept apologizing, but the humiliation I felt at that dinner was a bitter pill to swallow. That night, lying in bed, Mark spoke softly. I'm sorry about my mom, Lily. I never wanted you to go through this. I know, Mark. But it's not your fault. We'll get through this, together, I said, finding strength in our unity. After the ordeal with Margaret, I knew I had to make a positive change in our family dynamics. My first step was to connect with Mark's grandmother, a sweet elderly lady who had always shown me kindness. I decided to use my nursing skills to help her with her medical needs and, hopefully, bridge the gap in the family. The following week, I started my mission. I visited her with my medical kit in hand, feeling a mix of determination and nervousness. Grandma Jane, I thought I could help with your injections and checkups. I know it's been hard for you to get to the clinic, I said as she welcomed me into her cozy living room. She looked at me, a bit surprised but pleased. That's very thoughtful of you, Lily. I appreciate it, she said, her eyes twinkling. As I prepared her medication, we began to chat. How have you been feeling lately? I asked, trying to keep the conversation light and friendly. Oh, old age doesn't come alone, but I manage. Tell me, how is married life treating you? She inquired, her voice warm. It's good, Grandma. Mark is wonderful. We've had some ups and downs with the family, but we're happy, I replied honestly, carefully giving her the injection. She winced slightly but then smiled. I've heard about the troubles. I don't approve of how you've been treated, Lily. It's not right. I sighed, finishing up with her injection. Thank you. It's been tough, but I'm trying to make the best of it. From then on, our visits became a regular occurrence. Each time, I'd help her with her medical needs and spend some time chatting. We bonded over shared interests, like gardening. She showed me her beautiful garden, and we spent hours talking about different plants and flowers. Did you know that marigolds are supposed to keep pests away? She once told me, her face lit up with enthusiasm. No, I didn't. That's really interesting, I replied, genuinely enjoying our conversations. One day, as I was leaving, she took my hand. Lily, I want you to know that I see you as part of this family. You're a good person, and you make my grandson happy. Her words warmed my heart. Thank you, Grandma. That means so much to me. Our relationship grew stronger with each visit. Mark noticed the change too. I can't believe how much Grandma likes you. She always asks about you, he said one evening, a smile on his face. It's nice. She's a wonderful person. I think we understand each other, I responded, feeling a sense of achievement. Through my efforts with Grandma, I had started to mend the rift in Mark's family. It was a small victory, but it gave me hope that, in time, the others might see me for who I truly was. It was a long journey ahead, but I was ready to face it with patience and determination. Encouraged by my growing bond with Grandma Jane, I decided to reach out to Mark's cousins, Sarah and Emma. I had met them briefly before, but we never really got the chance to know each other. I thought a friendly gesture might help break the ice, so I invited them out for coffee. We met at a cozy cafe one Saturday afternoon. Sarah and Emma looked a bit hesitant at first, but I was determined to make a good impression. Thanks for meeting me here. I thought it'd be nice for us to get to know each other a bit more, I started, smiling warmly. Sarah, the more outspoken of the two, tilted her head slightly. Yeah, we were a bit surprised by the invite, given everything that's been going on. Emma nodded, looking a bit uncomfortable. We've heard a lot from Margaret. It's been awkward, to be honest. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. I know there's been a lot of talk. I just want you both to know that I really care about Mark and being part of the family. We chatted about various topics, slowly easing into a more comfortable conversation. I learned about their hobbies, their jobs, and shared some of my own experiences. You're actually pretty cool, Lily. We only ever heard one side of the story, Sarah admitted, sipping her coffee. Emma chimed in, Yeah, I think we misjudged you based on what we were told. It's nice to see a different side. Feeling a sense of relief, I suggested, maybe we can hang out more often? I'd really like that. Both Sarah and Emma smiled. We'd like that too, they responded in unison. From that day on, we started to build a friendship. We'd go out for movies, have lunch together, and soon I was part of their close circle. They even began to defend me in family gatherings when Margaret tried to make sly remarks. One evening, as Mark and I were having dinner at home, I told him about my progress with his cousins. Sarah and Emma are really great. We've been hanging out quite a bit. Mark looked up, a smile spreading across his face. That's awesome, Lily. I'm glad you're getting along with them. I think it's important for you to have allies in the family. After forging a bond with Mark's grandmother and cousins, I felt a newfound confidence. It was time to reach out to the broader circle, his aunts, uncles, and other relatives. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined. One Sunday, Mark and I hosted a small barbecue at our place. We invited his extended family, hoping for a relaxed setting to break down barriers. Surprisingly, most of them accepted the invitation. As our guests arrived, I could sense their curiosity and a bit of hesitation. Mark's Aunt Carol was among the first to arrive. I greeted her warmly at the door. "Welcome, Aunt Carol. We're so glad you could make it," I said, offering her a friendly smile. She studied me for a moment, then smiled back. "Thank you, Lily. This is quite a lovely home you have here." During the barbecue, I made an effort to chat with each of them. Uncle Mike, who was known for his love of gardening, found common ground with me as we discussed different plant varieties. "So, you're into gardening too, Lily?" he asked, intrigued. "Yes, I love it. There's something so peaceful about working with plants," I replied, sharing my experiences. Mark's cousin, Jenna, joined our conversation. "I've heard some things from Grandma about you. Seems like you've been a big help to her." I nodded. She's a wonderful person. I enjoy spending time with her. As the afternoon went on, the initial awkwardness gave way to laughter and shared stories. I helped serve food and made sure to engage in conversations, showing them the real me, not the version Margaret had painted. Toward the end of the event, Aunt Carol pulled me aside. "Lily, I'll be honest, we heard a lot from Margaret, but today showed us a different perspective. You're nothing like what she described." Her words were a victory, small but significant. "Thank you, Aunt Carol. I just want to be part of the family and make Mark happy," I said, feeling a sense of accomplishment. After everyone left, Mark wrapped his arms around me. "You did great today, Lily. Everyone seemed to really enjoy your company." "I think we made some progress," I said, hopeful. "Maybe, over time, they'll see that I'm not the person Margaret claims I am." Each conversation, each shared laugh was a step towards a better relationship with them. It wasn't just about disproving Margaret, but about creating a family bond based on truth and understanding. The Christmas season approached, and surprisingly, Margaret extended an invitation to Mark and me for a family dinner. Despite our reservations, we decided to accept, hoping for a peaceful holiday. The evening arrived, and the house was beautifully decorated. Margaret welcomed us with a forced smile. "Lily, dear, I need help in the kitchen. Would you mind?" I nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Of course, Margaret." As I followed her into the kitchen, she started delegating tasks. "Could you handle the salad and set the table? I want everything to be perfect." I busied myself with the tasks, trying to stay positive. The relatives began to arrive, filling the house with chatter and laughter. The tension was palpable when we all sat down for dinner. Margaret stood up, glass in hand, for a toast. "I'd like to say something before we begin," she announced, her voice loud and clear. Everyone fell silent, anticipating her words. "I would like to ask Lily to leave. She is an unnecessary addition to our family gathering, she declared, looking directly at me. The room erupted in murmurs of shock. Mark stood up, his face red with anger. "Mom, what are you doing? This is unacceptable." But before he could continue, I placed a hand on his arm, signaling him to let me handle it. I stood up, facing the family, my voice calm but firm. "I understand that I am not welcomed by everyone here. So, I will leave. But I want to extend an invitation to anyone who wishes to join us at our home. We would be happy to celebrate Christmas with family who appreciate and respect us." To my surprise, one by one, the relatives began to stand up. Aunt Carol was the first to speak. "I think I'll take you up on that offer, Lily." Uncle Mike and several others followed. "We're coming too," they chimed in. Margaret sat there, stunned, as almost every guest stood up to leave with us. In our home, the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. Laughter and cheerful conversation filled our living room as we celebrated with those who chose to join us. Later in the evening, as we were all enjoying dessert, Margaret's number flashed on my phone. I could hear her angry voice, but I chose to turn off the phone and focus on the joyous occasion around me. After the Christmas fiasco at Margaret's house, our celebration at home turned out to be a delightful affair, full of warmth and laughter. The night was winding down, and the atmosphere was relaxed, with everyone sharing stories and enjoying each other's company. That's when we heard a knock on the door. Mark glanced at me, a questioning look in his eyes, before he went to answer it. I followed him, curious about the late-night visitor. Standing there, in the cold night air, was Margaret. Her face was a mix of anger and desperation. "Mark, I demand to be let in. This is ridiculous, turning your mother away on Christmas," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. "Mom, after what you did tonight, I can't let you in. You hurt Lily and embarrassed us in front of the whole family," Mark replied, his stance firm yet his voice filled with regret. "But I'm your mother. How can you choose her over me?" Margaret's voice cracked, revealing a hint of vulnerability. "It's not about choosing, Mom. It's about respect and love, something you've consistently denied Lily," Mark said, his voice steady. I stepped forward, feeling a mix of pity and resolve. "Margaret, I've always wanted to be part of this family, but not at the cost of my dignity." She looked at me, her eyes searching for something, perhaps a sign of weakness or a chance to argue. But finding none, she let out a sigh, a mixture of defeat and bitterness. "Fine, have it your way. Enjoy your perfect little family," she said bitterly before turning away and disappearing into the night. Mark closed the door quietly and turned to me, his eyes filled with an apology he didn't need to voice. Back in the living room, the mood had shifted slightly, but Aunt Carol broke the silence. "You two are strong together. Don't ever let anyone come between that," she said, smiling kindly. "We won't, Aunt Carol, we won't," Mark replied, wrapping an arm around me. That night, as we cleaned up after the guests had left, Mark and I reflected on everything that had happened. It was a bittersweet realization that sometimes, in order to find peace, one must stand firm against those who disrupt it, even if they are family. In the days that followed, life returned to normal, but the events of that Christmas left a lasting impact on us. We learned the importance of setting boundaries, the value of respect in relationships, and the strength that comes from standing united in the face of adversity. Margaret's actions had, inadvertently, brought us closer to the rest of Mark's family. And while we hoped for reconciliation one day, we knew that our little unit, built on love and respect, was strong enough to weather any storm.